Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Greg Lockwood and I'm Stakeholder Coordinator at the BC Centre for Employment Excellence. For those of you who are not familiar with the Centre, it was created in 2012 with funding from the provincial and federal governments to act as a research and knowledge sharing organization for BC employment service providers and employers. The Centre's mandate is not only to do innovative research, but also to find ways to share best practices with BC practitioners and employers and better integrate evidence into practice. We created this webinar series as a way to reach out and connect with practitioners. Through the series, we have highlighted new research by the Centre, but are also tapping into the knowledge and expertise within the employment services community. You are invited to view the video recordings of previous webinars that we have posted on our website. Today's presentation dives into the important area of essential skills and will be co-presented by experts in this area from SkillPlan and the training group at Douglas College. Essential skills are used in nearly every job and throughout daily life in different ways and at varying levels of complexity. They provide the foundation for learning all other skills and enable people to better prepare for, get, and keep a job and adapt and succeed at work. Today's webinar will cover the 9 essential skills, ES assessment of the unemployed, what we have learned from ES research, and client success stories. And I think we were joking around earlier that we've discovered a 10th essential skills, and that's delivering webinars, but it's yet to be verified. So we have 3 speakers joining us here at our office in Vancouver. First, we have working nationally and provincially, Sue Grecki has over 20 years of experience in essential skills instruction, profiling, and benchmarking, developing work-related learning materials and skills assessments, designing courses that address specific skill needs of workers, and mentoring instructors on integrating essential skills into training. Sue is currently the manager of training and development with SkillPlan, where she focuses on developing strategies to improve the essential skills of people working in the construction, mining, and other industries. Valerie Lockyer is executive director with the training group at Douglas College. She has over 20 years of experience in the design, development, and management of programs in the nonprofit, public, and post-secondary sectors. She has been with Douglas College since 2000 and has held a variety of roles within self-employment, industry training, employment services, and essential skills. Val is a certified essential skills profile analyst and has worked on several national and provincial research projects which have demonstrated the impact of essential skills in the workplace and with unemployed. Current projects include Education Reboot with youth at risk, particularly those who have not completed high school, and testing whether social finance, a social impact bond type instrument, can be used in this sector. Mithra Lague joined Douglas College in 2010 as a teacher and coordinator after spending a combined 10 years at Kaplan at the Art Institute. She has experience coordinating various programs for a wide spectrum of clients, including newcomers, new graduates, and multi-barriered learners. She now spends her time coordinating and innovating essential skills programming and is known for adding a creative flair to program ideas. In late 2014, she and another colleague developed and began delivering Workplace Essentials, which has steadily grown since inception. When not at her desk, Mithra spends time meeting with clients, chatting with case managers, and creating new program ideas. Mithra holds a bachelor's degree from UBC, a teaching license, and an MA in Educational Administration from the University of London. Today's presentation will last about 45 minutes. You are encouraged to submit questions and comments to our presenters in the questions feature of your panel. We will have 2 Q&A periods, one after each of the 2 presentations. So we'll take a short break after Sue's presentation to take questions that you may have at that point. Remote CART or live closed captioning is now available during the Centre's webinars. You can find the link in the reminder email that we sent out yesterday and this morning. And now it is my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Sue.
Thank you. Hello. So as Greg introduced me, I'm Sue Grecki. I work with SkillPlan and have for over 20 years. Because Greg's already explained a little bit about what SkillPlan does, I'm going to move ahead a little bit. Okay. So basically at SkillPlan, our mission is to help workers improve essential skills in construction, mining, utilities, and other industries. Okay. We're supported by over 400 employers. We're supported by the building trades. We work with instructors. We work with apprentices. We work with Aboriginal groups, and as well, we work on other projects. Some of our services include industry-specific customized ES training programs. So we'll go into a company, we'll go into a community, and we'll develop a customized program specifically for that setting. We develop customized assessments. So some of you may be familiar with the TOWS. That's a formal assessment. Our assessments are a little bit more informal, but can assess reading, document use, numeracy, as well as some of the other ES. We provide technical instructional support, so working with instructors in different places like BCIT and some other colleges. We also participate in research and development, so we may work on a national project to see the impact that essential skills have within a company or within a setting. And we also develop our own publications. And at the end, you'll see our website for Skill Plan. Some of you may already know us because of the Measure Up site, but you can order our publications that way. I've got to do that too. So what is the importance of essential skills training? Why are they so important? Well, this shows it pretty clearly. So the Canadian Trucking Human Resources Council research did a project, and what they discovered was drivers with level 1 reading skills are almost 3 times more likely to be involved in workplace incidents or accidents than those with level 3 skills or higher. So low-level essential skills really impact safety in the workplace. Those with higher essential skills are more likely to work more safely, more efficiently. Now, I'm just guessing. Some of you will know what the 9 essential skills are. Some of you may not be so familiar, but they include reading, document use, numeracy, writing, oral communication, thinking skills. And thinking skills is divided up a little bit further. It includes things like decision making, critical thinking, and problem solving. Digital technology is there, working with others, and the idea of continuous learning. So the idea that once a worker learns something, that's not the end. If you're in any job, you're continuously expected to learn to upgrade your skills. So as Greg mentioned, literacy and essential skills are those skills needed for work, learning, and life. There's a foundation for learning all other skills, and we know from our experience, for example, for apprentices to be successful in trades training, they need a minimum of level 3 skills. And this is becoming more and more so in different occupations as well. There's fewer and fewer jobs that have only the lower level, level 1 and level 2 essential skills. Just to let you know a little bit of background where essential skills come from. So the first international adult literacy study called IELTS was done way back in 1994, and it was funded by the federal government. Since then, there's been a second IELTS in 2003, and there's been the PIAC in 2011. Some of you may be more familiar with that one. Basically, they assess reading, document use, and numeracy. And the results are placed on from a 0 to 500 scale, as you can see there. And when we talk about levels, we're generally talking about level 1, level 2, level 3, 4, and 5. 5 different proficiency levels. What you can see on this, it's a nice bell curve, but what's shocking is but just over 40% of Canadians are placed in that low level, level 1 and level 2. Meaning they don't have the essential skills to be truly effective in their occupations. And if you look closely at subgroups within these studies, for example, Aboriginal groups or immigrant groups, those results are a bit higher. So what does that mean? It means that more than 40% of Canadians do not read, write, do mathematics or solve problems at the level required to fully participate and succeed in today's economy. Now, I got to remember to keep switching slides, sorry. So this is an excellent website to go to. There's a lot of information here, and it's free, and you can download it quite easily. So first of all, there's over 350 essential skills profiles. Every one of these profiles has examples of tasks and the level of complexity for each of the 9 essential skills. There's tools and resources you can access. There's things like checklists. There's things like self-assessments that your clients can use to assess their own skills. It gives you a better idea of how the 9 essential skills are used in occupations. And the third thing that I'd recommend you look up is the Reader's Guide. So the Reader's Guide is what I use all the time when I'm developing curriculum, training materials, and other things, because I want to make sure that I'm developing them at the right ES level. Lots and lots of information in it. We can send out that. It's Employment and Social Development Canada, ESDC. I guess they're in the process of moving their website to someplace else, but you can still access it there, and we could send that out later if they want it.
Absolutely, yep.
Good. Oh, and the ES profiles use the National Occupation Classification, the NOC, and you can look up occupations that way. I think a lot of career practitioners are familiar with that. Some of you probably don't know what we mean by when we say level 1, level 2. So here's an example of a level 1 task when we're talking reading document use. So the task is to circle the hand signal for stop. Stop is a direct match to stop in the document. All they have to do is make that match and circle it. They don't have to write anything. They're just matching. They're locating one piece of information. That's an example of a level 1 task and what somebody with level 1 ES is able to do. Now this is a fairly simple one, and remember it's a continuum from 0 to 500. About 20% of Canadians would struggle with this task. So this, a level 2 essentials for reading document use. In this one, you can see the document's a lot more text-based, but that's not what decides the complexity, it's the task. So in this task, they have to list 3 types of scaffolds that are only used as light-duty scaffolds. They have to scan through the entire document, and they have to locate 3 pieces of information. We call this cycling through the document. Now this is a little bit of a low level 2 because the 3 responses they need are right together, and there's a bit of a hint with the ABC, but they still have to locate 3 pieces of information. Now the important thing to note about this level 1 and level 2, they've located information, but they haven't truly done something with it yet, and that's what happens and kicks in really at, sorry, forgot those, level 3. So here they're looking for a similarity. They're looking for something that's the same between 2 different pieces of information. What am I doing? I keep doing that, don't I? Okay. Sorry. Oops. Okay. I screwed it up.
It's okay. Do you want to go back? Just
yes, I'd like to go back.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem.
One more.
One more?
Yeah. Oh, good. So they're looking for a similarity between a tail length on 2 different types of wire rope. Not only do they have to cycle and locate 2 pieces, they actually have to integrate it. They have to put it together and figure out what's the same between those 2 pieces. There's a huge jump between level 2 ES and level 3 ES. Big jump in the type of cognitive processing that a worker or a learner is expected to be able to do. And this is the biggest jump when we're working with people. Now, just to let you know, level 4 and 5 tasks just involve a lot of specialized knowledge. So you can imagine somebody, an IT person, they have a lot of specialized knowledge to do with computers and things that most of us don't know. They have the ability to make high-level inferences. They can generate an idea. They can come up with something new. Okay, So let's move on. This is important. This is that same 0 to 500 complexity scale. And what you really want to note about this and keep in mind is that those two lowest level skills, level 1, level 2, people are still learning to read. They're still at the very lowest level learning to decode words. At the higher level, they're still lacking vocabulary. They may not understand that cease means the same thing as stop, for example. And then as you move up into level 3, that 276, they're reading to learn. And that's when true problem solving and thinking skills kick in. That's when people can really locate information, do something with it, and use it to solve a problem. So workers with level 1 skill, level 1 ES skills, and I guess that's another thing to keep in mind. Workers don't tend to have level 1 skills all the way across all of the essential skills. They sort of go up and down. They might have level 3 math skills, for example, but level 1 and level 2 in reading and document use. But if we were talking about workers that were assessed with level 1 essential skills, it's difficult for them. They can locate one piece of information, as I showed you. They can use simpler documents. Think of the amount of entry forms people have in their jobs. They're not going to be very good at entering a lot of information. They're not going to be able to enter a summary of a shift, for example. In terms of thinking skills, the problem solving, decision making, and critical thinking, they can do it, but it's familiar tasks with very few steps, limited factors. And oral communication, language is quite concrete, quite factual. So to be able to go to a manager and summarize the situation is probably very difficult. Excuse me. As workers get closer to that level 3 cutoff, so workers with level 2 essential skills, they can start cycling through locating using longer and more complicated pieces of information. They find it easier to enter information into documents. But the thing to remember here, and I've got it down under that problem solving, decision making, and critical thinking, is we're talking about familiar situations when we're talking about work. So as long as things are going on smoothly, level 2 workers are fine. They're not having any problems. But if something new or something odd happens, that's when problems kick in and they're not able to deal with them. And think of how many times that happens in a job. It happens to me a lot. Then I need help. So they are able to give instructions. They would be able to train somebody new coming into the company, but as long as it's familiar tasks that they've been doing for some time. And as you can imagine, as I've been saying, it's at level 3 where somebody's truly independent, where they're reading to learn rather than learning to read. So this is when they can write that summary in the entry form. They can summarize the shift. They can explain where the problem was and what went wrong. They can make the right decision when they're looking at, they're critically thinking. They can make the right decision in either a familiar or an unfamiliar situation. They can contrast pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, and they can figure out a good solution to a problem. Workers at level 2, because they wouldn't be able to summarize the situation quite correctly, they'd be missing important information, and that would lead to choosing an incorrect solution. So when we talk about workers in the workplace and we go in and we do training programs, we're always trying to aim for level 3 essential skills. That's our goal. Can't always get there. It depends on where people are starting from, but that's the goal. And last slide, actually, second last slide. So essential skills do matter. They matter a great deal to employers, and they also matter to workers. So workers with higher essential skills, they keep their jobs longer. They're not the first to be laid off when things are happening at the company. They're not absent as much from work, much lower absenteeism when there's workers with higher ES. companies have better health and safety records. They don't need as much supervision. There's an increase in both quality and productivity. So for both the employer and the worker, those essential skills are extremely important. Now, I do have one last slide, sorry. Some of you may be familiar with this, with our skill plan website, and some of you may have used materials from our Measure Up site. I'd be happy to explain a little bit to people if they contacted me how to use the Measure Up site. There's things that you as career practitioners could use from this site to help you perhaps informally assess somebody's ES skills before sending them somewhere else to be assessed. And thank you. I enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
Oops.
I'll just grab the mouse from you, and you know, we have a large group on the line, but we have a quiet group. We have no questions that have come in so far, but that's okay. Sue's not going anywhere.
That might be good. That might be bad.
I think it was such a thorough and detailed explanation, Sue, that yeah, we just don't have any questions yet. But that's okay, because you have time to ponder any questions that you have around any of the material that Sue presented, or any of the upcoming material that Mithra and Val are going to discuss. So I'm just going to switch over presentations here. We're trying again a new format. Calamio. So this is you might remember that we tried a new format with the Prezi a couple of webinars ago, and we're gonna try another one again today. So I'm gonna pass.
Magnifying glass. Just hit the magnifying glass.
Hit the magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll leave it to you. So it is a bit of an experiment, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Bear with us a little bit.
It really looks neat.
I like you.
Hopefully
Thank you very
it's
much.
coming up on everyone's screen.
Should we check that they can see it? Or
No, we should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll I'll pass it over to you, Val and Mithra.
Mithra, take it. Well, hi everybody. Thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. I'm Mithra. I'm with Douglas College, and I want to talk to you about an Essential Skills for Job Seekers project that I'm working on called Workplace Essentials. So just a little bit of brief history for some of you who may have been in the industry for a while. You will remember Foundations, which was a very successful project that we ran twice, in fact. The project Foundations was a project for job seekers to use essential skills directly in order to find and sustain employment. It was so successful that it came back in 2013 as a national research project. We've had some results recently. Can I share some of them?
Sure.
Should I?
Sure. Yeah.
What we found was that, in fact, people that increased their essential skills before going back to work or retraining for work had an increase in salaries, in hourly rates, and that they were more satisfied with their jobs overall. So that was some really great findings. But conversely, what we also found during that period was that there was some transition happening around Work BC, and it was really hard for case managers to figure out how to refer. So once the project finished in 2015, we took that feedback back to the college, which was the case managers wanted this program, but they weren't sure how to access it. And we took those learnings and created a new customized fee-for-service project called Workplace Essentials. So a little bit about what Workplace Essentials is. It is an essential skills program that embeds career exploration, job search, and labor market research as well. It's 6 weeks typically, and it runs Monday to Thursday from 9 to 3. It's small group, but it's also individualized essential skills enhancement. Now, I want to just touch on the fact that it is customized, because depending on the market that you have, the client profile that you have at that time, we make adjustments and modifications to ensure that your clients get what they need out of it. So before program starts, we always start with an intake assessment. So Sue talked a bit about the measured skills. We're looking at reading, document use, and numeracy for some baseline information about where your client is right now. So it's not a pass or a fail, it's really a starting point and an opportunity to explore what we can do for your client in a 6-week window. So from those results and a knock, so again, we need to have some kind of career goal, we're going to make a partial decision about whether your client is ready for our program. The other pieces that are really important for us in intake are some of their self-identified barriers, where they want to go, how realistic their goals are, and really if they're ready to participate in the program. It becomes a three-way decision between the program delivery people, so myself and my colleagues, the client, and the case manager. Should a client decide to go on to program with us, they would participate in full days, 9 to 3, Monday to Thursday, in modules. So we're doing morning and afternoon modules. Morning modules are really focused on workplace culture. We really want to help clients use their essential skills and increase their essential skills to work with others. We find that a lot of the clients we work with lack the cultural awareness of how to problem solve or work in a group, or just how to meet adversity. As Sue was saying, clients can operate within their level, but once they're challenged, they often struggle. So we really want to work those skills quite hard. The afternoons are much more focused on the individualized learning plans. So that's where we're looking at the essential skills that the client currently has in relation to what they will need to be successful in their chosen occupation. So one of our instructors will be working one-on-one with each of the clients to ensure that they're getting what they need out of this. Outcomes you can expect from this program. Your clients are going to be more confident and efficient in targeting their job search. So they may come in with a career goal, they may change it midway, and they may start with a new job goal, but they're going to be much more targeted when they're doing that. They're going to have increased skills to support success. They're going to be prepared to fully articulate their skill set. So again, as part of the morning module, we're really working on helping clients articulate what they have done, what they can do, and where they want to go. They're also going to demonstrate increased productivity and organization, so that task management piece. And they're going to recognize the importance of continuous learning. So again, as Sue was saying, that's a really big piece for employers and just also for people to be happy overall in life. So that's a bit about the program. Let's take a look at the client. So typically the clients that we are working with, according to WorkBC, would be a tier 3 or 4. So in other words, if you're not with WorkBC right now and you're on the line, our clients tend to be isolated but motivated. So we're looking for both pieces. Isolated but unmotivated is probably not a good fit for us. They're typically IA, PWD, and in some cases EI, and they're always case managed. They lack digital literacy. So many of our clients think they have great skill because they know how to use Facebook. But once we get into actually attaching something to an email, they have no idea what to do. They have significant gaps in their work or educational history. So an average gap for us would likely be around 10 years. Clients are really removed from employment. And they have multiple barriers. So that could be any of many things. It could be multiple of many things. Things like cycling through addictions, but definitely clean at time of program. They may have been insecurely housed or imminently homeless. Those would be barriers we see. They could have mental health issues, but are now supported. So that's a bit about who we're working with. I have a great quote here that I wanted to share with you because I think it resonates some of what we're talking about, and it's got my name in it. I really enjoyed.
I noticed that.
I really enjoyed my time in the Essential Skills program, and the staff is really helpful. Mithra and Nancy are excellent, and they helped me find out my strengths for work. I feel more comfortable and confident for working now. Thank you very much. So that's one of our clients from Wally. A PWD client. And the reason I thought that was important to mention is because the client says two great words here, which are comfortable and confident. And I think that that's really what we see. We see our clients moving from uncertain, unclear, and nervous to confident. And I think that also comes down to we're using essential skills to break down tasks that they felt were otherwise impossible, like writing a resume. That was a job that they couldn't even imagine where to start with. But Essential Skills gives it some parameters by making these tasks measurable, manageable, and meaningful. So some of the reasons that people might refer. I like to base this on the employment continuum. So if we start at the very end here with barriered clients and we want to get to independent, we have a few markers that give us an indication of when we should be referring or what outcome we should be looking for. So some case managers use this program because they have clients that are very isolated, very far from employment, very far from education, and they want to know if they even have the life skills to sustain short-term training. Are they going to work? Are they maybe PWPD, persons with persistence disabilities now, and they need to look at shifting their file over? So this would be a great reason to refer people to see if we can get them connected to community, if we can get some traction in terms of their motivation, have them wanting to work towards something. So that would make up a fairly large portion of our clients. In fact, I have a group of them right now who are just connecting to community. So community kitchens, they're working on Tai Chi, so movement and breath and self-regulation. They're working on personal budgeting. So they're getting set up for success, although the outcome will not be employment yet. There is an outcome for them. Another reason to refer clients is if you're wondering if they might be ready to go on to school. You don't want to spend the money to do a full training package, but you do want to know if they've got the basic skills they need to be successful. Are they going to come on time? Do they have the digital literacy required to do the program? So that would be a good reason to send your client. And lastly, they're ready to go to work. They've indicated a career goal. They're on the path, but you want to make sure that they have those skills to be not only successful, but move up in their industry. That's another good reason we would target their essential skills intervention just to their job. So all along, there are outcomes that ultimately all lead to employment. It just depends where the client is starting. So I just would like to tell one quick little story, if that's okay. Just to illustrate it, I had a client a while ago who was studying for an entrance exam for university. It was a public university she was working to get into. She did her course. She failed the entrance exam. So we were worried. We thought, oh no, she's going to be devastated. But what was fantastic about it was that she called us and said, okay, I failed it. I'm going to study now. So can you help me get some sources together? Can I call you back when I have some questions? She developed the resilience to persevere through that failure. So we're taking people that have a fairly bleak outlook on their capacity and giving them the skills and strategies to move through those episodes of unsuccess or dissatisfaction towards something better.
Yeah, it's really important. We find that with our apprentices, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, you have to teach them that failing is okay. We all fail, that's fine, but now what do you do with it? So who refers? EPBCs in the Lower Mainland are a big referral source for us, so we're working with many of the cities. So Vancouver, North Van, Surrey, Maple Ridge, Port Moody, Burnaby. I think that's a pretty comprehensive list. But there's also other referral sources for us. So I have taken clients from the Western Institute for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Fraser Health, various Aboriginal groups, and Canadian Mental Health Association. So if you are an EPBC, you would refer through basic and essential skills training for funded clients. So as long as your clients have a funding source, we are all good. You would contact me directly and I will walk you through the process. If you are referring from another organization, you work with clients, you have somebody, you think this is a suitable program for them, then you would also contact me and we would find a way to bill it, probably through an EPBC. Any of my other referral sources have linked back into WorkBC, but I could certainly facilitate that for you. So I've got a lot of questions. So the most important page, right? The outcomes. So far we've been operating for about 18 months, and here is some of our skill gain. We're very happy and pleased to report. Our overall skill gain in reading has been 24, and I hope you can see that. Oops. 24 points. In document use, we've seen an increase of an average of 32 points, and in numeracy, an average of 20 points. So pretty good skill gains, right, Sue?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Looking at the pre and the post numbers, in reading, our average client came at a 211 and left at a 234. So 211 is a level 1, as Sue pointed out. So in reading, that's literally locating one piece of information and nothing more. And leaving at a 234 with the ability to cycle through material, but also they now have the ability to learn the skills. So that's even more important than the actual skill gain, is that they now know that they're capable of gaining.
Yes.
Document use, similar findings. We started at a 209, which is a level 1, and moved to a 241. So very similar outcome. We're seeing that clients are able to learn. So once they leave with us, they're still going to go on. And it would be really, really interesting if we could retest them in a year or so and see what their skill gain is at that point. So maybe something to come in the future.
That's actually, sorry.
No, please.
That's actually part of the project we're working on right now with the manufacturing plants. They're tested immediately after training. They're tested they're pre-assessed. They're tested immediately after the 30 hours of intervention, and then they're tested a year after.
Nice, yeah. So that would be a nice piece. So stay tuned. People that are already referring, maybe that's something we can work on. Numeracy. Sorry, this one for some reason got really small, but I can tell you what the numbers are. 196 was the intake and 217 was the exit. So still within a level 1, but still an increase. So we're looking at people that have still learned some strategies and have successfully applied them.
Yeah.
So our work outcomes, we're very, very, very happy with what we are seeing. 40% of the clients that have gone through our program are in training. And so in training, as I've defined it here, means they are actively working with their case managers to get into training. So they're doing their training packages, they're doing their research to choose the right school for them, or they're waiting for a start date, or they're actually seated in class. So that's that 40%. 37% are working. So I check these numbers at 4 weeks post-program and then 3 months and 6 months. And so that number is as of last week. And 23% other is comprised of people that have just fallen off, like they've changed their phone number and we can't find them. They've left EPBC, so we just have no contact with them at all. A couple are back in jail. If you get pregnant, they reuse. So it's that all the other is the right word. No traction. Almost there. So one of the last things I wanted to mention is that I've talked to you a lot about the supply piece of it, that we're working to increase the supply, the capacity of people available to work. But there's also the demand piece. And so what we've been working on right now is really the supply demand, and that's occupational skills training. So we know that essential skills is really the best interventions are when they align with a career goal. So we've developed a few programs in which there is a direct employment outcome. So what that means is clients come in, they do an essential skills intervention, which is, I would say, quite heavy because it's linear and it's like a block. And then they would move into specific training for whatever industry that we are targeting. They'd also have third-party certifications, so it could be first aid, it could be WMIS, it could be food safe, whatever is applicable. And then it's also going to have employer connections. So people will come in and talk to the group about the industry. They'll be there to ask questions, sort of take the fear out of it, and then they'll come back for a hiring fair. So the goal is to have people come in prepared for work and leave with jobs. So right now we've successfully run this incarnation for basic security training and building service worker. Right now I'm also working on a casino project with Edgewater Casino, and they were selected from a bunch of casinos because they have a fantastic employee package. There's also food counter attendant training, which is out there for offer. And I'm very excited about looking into the financial sector and seeing what I can do for our clients to get entry level in that industry. And lastly, I am happily accepting registrations for September. So this summer, I will be very, very busy meeting with you and your clients and doing intake assessments for various projects. So give me a call if any of the projects that you saw featured there look interesting to you. I would love to meet with you and chat with you. And lastly, if it's not something, if you saw something in here that excited you, but it wasn't quite right, do remember that it's customized, and I'd be happy to talk with you about what you think your center needs and maybe investigate that a bit. I take people as individuals or as a cohort, and my information is there, and I'll make my presentation available to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mithra. So we have finished a bit early, and we have had a number of questions that have come in the meantime. I think while we kind of scroll through the questions here, one thing I wanted to ask you, Sue, after your presentation was, I mean, you mentioned that over 40% of Canadians aren't at that level 3 rating yet, and I was just curious to know where is the more common places that they're falling through the cracks? Is it not finishing high school, or what would you say is leading to not
No,
attaining
it has
those?
nothing to do with finishing high school or even attending college. People that come out from high school, and when they're assessed for their essential skills levels, they still can be assessed at a low level 2, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not related to grade level at all, not in any way. The other thing with essential skills is if you don't use them, you lose them. So that's why Mithra was talking about, and I added in that assessing them a year after. So one of the companies we're working with on a project right now has already been asking us, and we're going to go in and do some supervisory training, because they want to know how can we make sure they're going to keep the skills like a year after, 2 years later. And this is really exciting because not many employers do that. So.
Okay. So we're going to take a look at some of the questions that folks have been asking. The first one, and I think it was in referral to your presentation, Sue, is how would some of the content that you went through, how would that apply to an individual who's functionally illiterate?
Okay. Bow Valley College, who does the TOWS assessment, that's the one you use at Douglas College
No,
for entrance, or you're using the Michael Herzog?
We use both.
We use both. So they now have a level that's down there and tests like phonics and sounds and things. I'm not as familiar with it because I don't work with that level, but they can be assessed, absolutely. I think if you contacted Mithra actually and asked, she'd be better sourced for that, but you can assess those people.
Great, thanks, Sue. Someone's asking to repeat the 9 essential skills, so even though I know you know them off by heart, they're going to be listed in the presentation that we send out following this webinar. So you'll have them available to you there.
Yeah. Maybe I could just add though, people don't use essential skills in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're reading or you're using documents at work, you're probably using them, or one of the reasons you're using them is to solve a problem. So think of somebody, the millwright in a company that has to fix the equipment. He might be reading documents to see how the machine's put together. He might be reading something from a previous shift that tells him what went wrong, and he has to take all that information and problem solve or do some critical thinking.
Okay, and this person's also asking you to explain more about the 3-domain assessment.
Oh, okay. TOWS from Bow Valley College assesses reading, document use, and numeracy. So when we say reading, we're talking about material that's in paragraphs and sentences. When we say document use, we're talking about diagrams, schematics, bulleted lists, different kinds of tables with information in them. And numeracy is not like adding 1.5 plus 2. It's more taking a task and figuring out how to set it up as a mathematical problem and then solving it. So those are the 3 areas that are generally assessed.
Okay. And now back to Mithra's presentation. I think you, in the characteristics of some of the clientele, you mentioned the word isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you clarify that?
An isolated client for us would be someone who is very removed from employment, possibly from community as well. They've probably done not much else than stay home for the last little while. They don't know where to find information about employment or education. They don't know how to make meaningful connections with the community. They're really isolated in that sense. They have very little support system in terms of moving forward.
Okay. We've got someone asking about a tool to assess a client with developmental disabilities.
Would you try Bow Valley College at the very bottom level, possibly?
It really depends. For us, it would depend on the extent
Yes.
of the disability, and quite generally speaking, if it's a developmental disability, our case managers would probably do like a Psych Vogue or one of the other assessments more suited for a developmental disability. Essential skills is more about sort of improving those core foundational skills and getting people closer to success in employment and education. It really isn't, the framework isn't really designed to deal with cognitive or developmental disability. I mean, you may have some small impact, but it's maybe not the best fit.
Okay. It's in the referrals, Mithra had said that Fraser Health was one of your sources that would refer.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that it would be the case, and this person is asking if that would mean that the other areas, the other health authorities would be able to refer as well.
Yeah, I think what would be best is if you actually contacted me directly and I could get in touch with your Work BC office and cultivate a relationship there, because ultimately the funding goes through Work BC. So in order to get the clients funded through that, they do need to go through that mechanism. But I would welcome you to give me a call even tomorrow if you'd like. And we could explore it a bit and talk about what we can do for your client and how we could possibly refer.
You've mentioned a couple of different assessments that you used. Someone's asking what assessment is used, or which one do you use to determine client level and need?
The TAOS assessment is often used. There's also Michael Herzog.
I use a different assessment than the TAOS usually with my clients, and there's a few reasons why. So I use the Essential Skills Group assessment, and the reason that I tend to choose that one is because it's online, so it gives me an extra read of the client's digital literacy. It's also great because it's got breaks, natural breaks between the three domains. So because my clients are often anxious and isolated, they've been away from assessments for a long time, it's a nice tool because it allows them to take lots of breaks in between sessions. And lastly, I have choice between the length of the exam. So I often choose a shorter assessment rather than a longer one, but I have that flexibility depending on what the client's profile is. And lastly, and maybe, two more points. The domains, so the reading, the document use, and the numeracy are all further broken down. So for me, it's very useful when I'm looking at the scores because I can see exactly where a client has issues. So for example, in numeracy, the assessment might reveal that the client has a gap in estimations. So it can help me really tailor their program by further breaking down those domains. And then I think the last thing I really want to say about it was that the assessment results are instant, and that's awesome. So I don't need to get the clients to come back. Mm-hmm. Again, being isolated and anxious, it's not always easy to get them right back in. So they can do their assessment. I can meet them right away. I can go over their scores, look at the knock, and have a really great conversation with them right there. So there's no anticipation of what if I failed? What if I failed? I can just dispel that right away.
And the name of that assessment again was?
Essential Skills Group. And if you contact me about that, I'd be happy to send you a test code. So anyone who would be interested in giving it a try, I can set you up. You can try the assessment, see if you like it. There's definitely opportunity for that.
It's also on a scale to 500?
Absolutely.
And so your results
they're all the same. Yeah.
They're all the same.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they all use the IELTS and the 5 levels.
Okay.
And if you didn't have time for that, or you wanted to do something really quick, you could go to our skill plan website and try the measure up. And if you want it, you could contact me and I could give you some suggestions about which which activities from there to use perhaps. But it'd give you a quick idea. Maybe we need further assessment, for example.
Okay. So the last couple of questions are around the Workplace Essentials program itself. You mentioned some of the sources, and I know, Mithra, we were discussing a couple of days ago that you have had calls from outside the Lower Mainland.
Yes, I have.
Someone's asking about that, and then also about probably an inevitable question here, the fees associated with it, and then how many students per class.
Okay. So in terms of service outside of the Lower Mainland, I would be very happy to talk about that with you as well. It would probably be a cohort based, so we'd have to agree on some numbers, and then we could certainly come up there and deliver for you. So that would be fantastic. Again, give me a call. And the fees, there is a range depending on whether it's Workplace Essentials or whether it's occupational skills training. So Workplace Essentials, including all assessments, so a pre and a post, and if you're taxable, comes to just shy of $2,700 for the 6 weeks. So that's going to include everything. OST is a little bit different and it varies by occupation. So again, you'd have to contact me, but it's in the range of about 5,000.
Okay.
And sorry, numbers?
Oh, numbers, yes.
Typically, a class for us is about 8 participants. I find that's a really nice number because it's small enough that it can be managed by one instructor, but large enough that the clients can work together. That would be a pretty average size.
Okay. Thank you. And that wraps up the questions that we've received. And that's pretty much perfect timing because we're coming up on the hour. So I want to thank all 3 of our presenters today. Thanks to all of you, of course, for attending. Today's session was recorded and we will post the video of the presentation along with closed captioning on our website and send you all the link in an email within the next week. As always, we welcome your input and feedback. So when you leave the webinar, you will be asked to complete a short survey, and we would appreciate it if you took a minute or 2 to share your thoughts. It will help us immensely in planning future events. We would also appreciate any suggestions you have for future webinar topics. Speaking of which, the next webinar takes place on August 23rd. We're going to take a break in July. We'll be back in exactly 2 months. And it's going to be on one of the R&I projects that the Centre is leading on the BC Partners in Workforce Innovation. So keep an eye on our website and newsletter for more information and to register. So that ends our webinar today. On behalf of our presenters and my colleagues here at the Centre, thank you all for participating in today's discussion and have a great afternoon.